Welcome to the Finance Marketing Podcast, a show that empowers finance professionals to market their businesses in ways that feel good and actually achieve results. I'm your host, Hillary. I've been working with folks in financial services to develop marketing strategies that work and create results-oriented marketing content since 2020. And I've learned a lot about what works in finance marketing, what doesn't work, and where financial services pros get stuck. Join us each Friday as we explore real, effective ways to market your finance business and connect with folks who truly embody your ideal clients. My guest this week is Aryel Gladden-Banning, a consultant who works with solo advisors and small teams in the RIA space on their operations and systems. Aryel is currently pursuing her next chapter on the RIA space, seeking short or long-term opportunities to assist advisors with their client servicing. So whether your business is growing and you are looking to expand your team, filling a gap due to employee transition or termination, or need temporary support due to employee leave, Aryel is a great resource. Now, Aryel and her husband, Jordan, who is a financial advisor, are actually clients of mine. And over the past several months, we collaborated on a really exciting project together. Aryel brought me in to help streamline the prospect communication process for Jordan's RIA firm. And through working together on this project, I got to see firsthand how she thinks about advisor operations and the challenges that can quietly but powerfully sabotage an advisor's growth efforts. So in this conversation, we're diving into one of the most common pitfalls she sees, especially with solo advisors and small RIA teams, which is spending so much time trying to perfect and reinvent their prospect communications that leads end up falling through the cracks rather than being nurtured and ultimately turning into clients. So we talk about why documenting that process, your prospecting process, is absolutely critical and how to actually implement it into your CRM so prospects don't disappear or get left behind. And what I really appreciated about this conversation is how Aryel emphasizes that you don't need perfect systems or processes before you can move forward on this. You just need working systems that are adaptable and can change as your business grows, that you can test and improve. So for financial advisors who are growing their practices and finding themselves overwhelmed by the prospect follow-up process, maybe emails and follow-ups are slipping through the cracks, prospects are kind of getting lost in the process, so they never end up becoming clients. This conversation offers a really practical roadmap for creating efficiency without sacrificing the personal touch that makes you stand out and makes you that warm advisor that your clients trust. So without further ado, let's dive in. Aryel, thank you so much for joining me today on the Finance Marketing Podcast. How are you?
I am doing great. It is early, and this is a great way to start the day talking marketing and RA services. So I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing really good. Yes, I'm really glad we could find a time to do this. I know we both have very small children, and finding time in the day is really hard. So
Yes, you wouldn't think it'd be as challenging to find time for yourself with small ones, but that is way easier said than done.
way easier said than done. So let's dive in. So you and your husband are clients of mine. We've been working on kind of a big project over the last few months to help you streamline some of your communications with prospects over the last few months. And I want to dive into that project, and maybe we could start. If you could just tell our listeners why this project was necessary, like what was going on in the firm where you were like, okay, we need help.
Yes. So when you say my husband and me, so I just want to come in by saying, so my husband owns an RIA firm, and I actually work as a consultant with solo advisors in the RIA space or very small teams in the RIA space. And so my husband just started his own firm, and he kind of asked me, he's been in practice for, a year and a half, almost 2 years, has been going at it solo, and was finally like, hey, you do this for other advisors. Can you come in and just kind of watch what I'm doing and maybe give me some recommendations? So that's kind of how the conversation started. And one of my favorite things to do when I go into RA firms is just observe and just watch and I say like, hey, don't do anything differently than what you're already doing because I'm here. I'm just a fly on the wall. I'm just looking to see how you operate. And then that allows me to, see things as they are, find some opportunities for like improvement, and then we can implement those. So this was one of those areas where, Jordan, the advisor, was busy with conversations and was getting leads coming in and was, having some good conversations. But then we were kind of seeing like, okay, you had a conversation with this person, but what happened? There was no meetings scheduled. There was no follow up. There was just a lot of drop offs. And then also, what I was seeing is when he would be sending out communications, invite for the next meeting, giving some more information, he would pull up an email that was already written that he had used before to communicate next steps, and was just sitting there and spending lots of time on it and like reevaluating the process, rewriting the communication. And he was just spending so much time in the process that he wasn't actually able to complete the process or move forward with the process with specifically prospects, with leads. So I kind of was like, all right, this is your biggest area of opportunity because you're in growth mode. You're trying to, get new clients and service people and, help people out. But you're kind of not, I hope this doesn't sound mean, but kind of getting in your own way. And that's something I think I see in like kind of the solo advisor space with RAs, is that the advisors are like really stuck up here and just have a hard time kind of getting it out and kind of, like just allowing themselves to like move forward and kind of move on through things. So long explanation to say that I just observed the sales processing prospect, saw how much time was being essentially wasted on reinventing the wheel each time, and a need to fully just develop that process from start to finish with communications, when to follow up, just a full robust system in place.
Right, because at the start of this project, I think you kind of mentioned this, the process was living inside Jordan's head.
Mm-hmm.
And because he was, it wasn't written down and he couldn't look at objectively, he was just thinking so much about not only what to do next, but how could I do it better next time? And how could I like improve on this and things like that? And so it was just, I imagine it for him, it was just like brain overload every single time.
Yes, exactly. And you kind of hit it on the head, is that every time, even though he was doing this process, week after week or day after day, depending on what conversations look like, every time he would go to send a communication, it was exactly that. He was putting his head into it, going, okay, how can I do this better? Which means I have to do it differently, which means I have to rethink about this whole process and what I'm communicating. And even down to like, what are my services and what I'm offering? And does that set me apart? It was just a constant reinventing of the wheel.
Mm.
And we just needed to get something in place. And so that's not a bad place to be. So I don't want to like, diss anyone if you're doing that. But there's one thing of constantly being, thinking about your processes and evaluating them versus actually carrying them out and doing them. I think you have to have something in place, test it, have, your subjects like, okay, I'm going to do this with 3 prospects, evaluate the outcome. And then if I liked how it went, keep going, keep carrying on with that. You've got something good. Or, hey, there was fall off points, I didn't like this aspect of it, then you can make some changes. But if you're constantly reevaluating, you're kind of losing the purpose for being an advisor and helping people.
Right.
You're actually taking your ability to do that, because you're not spending your time helping people and changing and affecting their financial picture, their financial future. You're just kind of stopping yourself from that.
Right, right. And I think there's something there's a little bit of a mental block too of like when you are in the when you're in the process of improving your process and evaluating your process and finding out what works and what doesn't, it almost feels like you need to have it figured out before you write it down. But I actually think the opposite is true. Like you write down what the process is as you're doing it. And then because it's written down, it's going to be easier to make improvements at specific points that have a real impact on the time that you save, the day that you have, right? Like just how you protect your energy and also the experience that your prospects are going through as well. So, can we dive in a little bit? I really want to hear from your perspective of like what did we do together on this project to make some progress?
Yeah, game changer. So this process that was, built and implemented has just been such a game changer. I am just like, if there are advisors out there who do not have this in place and are not using this, we need to change that. This needs to happen. It just has made life just again. So when I come in, it's not only the kind of being the fly on the wall in the beginning and looking at what the firm is doing, but it's also after the fact. So when I come in and we implement something, I kind of then take a step back and put myself into that observation role to say, okay, we've made this really big change. What happens now? What's going on? What is the result? And it has just been so incredibly just game changer. Like that's literally all I can say. So and it's just like you said. So, the advisor had a process for how, this basically when a lead comes in or a prospect starts a conversation, how are they being led through this process? So through developing this workflow or this outline that we did, it kind of laid the process out in front of us and made us think like, okay, so here's what you're already doing. Are there any changes you do want to make? Is there anything different that should be done based on what, your experience thus far? So there is the evaluation and a point in developing this sales process to have a chance to make some changes. We also looked at fall off points. So
Mhm.
what are the points at which people are exiting the conversation? Like where are the points at which the prospect or the lead no longer engages and doesn't move forward? So where are the areas of opportunity to keep the conversation rolling and keep the engagement? So with an advisor, if you don't have a process or you think you have a process, whiteboard that, outline that. What are you doing currently to lead someone? They give you a call, an email, they schedule through your website. What is the journey that you're leading them on? That's relatively really easy to write down on paper and say, okay, here's what I'm doing. And in our experience in the RIA space is you're not just having a 15-20 minute phone call with a prospect and they're going, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Let's sign up to be a client. That's not how it goes. Usually there are quite a few touch points to get there. So in that, having longer conversations, multiple meetings. So for example, with Jordan, the advisor we worked on this with, he has an introduction call. He has 2 collaboration meetings. And then after he has like a good picture of what the relationship would look like and how he could help, he then sends out a proposal. And that proposal is a point where they decide to engage as a client or not. So that's 4 different meetings essentially, but that also doesn't include the different communications that are going out during that process. So there can be a lot to this. And with having multiple conversations, that also means you have to account for fall off points and areas of pivot, right? Is it something where, they just need a follow up? So you send an email to schedule your next meeting, but maybe they don't want to read their emails, or they're not good at that, or it gets lost somewhere. So then what's your follow-up? And I think that was a really big area of opportunity, is creating a timeline within the
Mhm.
process. So it wasn't only about, okay, what is your process? When someone comes in, what is the journey that you're leading them on? Okay, so that's one part of it. The second part is, okay, what is your communication? What are your templates or your scripts that you're going to be using during this process? That's how you communicate. That's your voice. That's how you kind of show, to me, I think you're showing value there. So it's not only your communications and having those put together, but we also developed a timeline. Okay, so when are you sending out these emails? When are you following up? And I would say that follow up has been, this whole thing's been a game changer, but that has been next level or next tier, because since implementing the timeline and the follow up and following it and using it, there has been little to honestly zero people who have not moved forward in the process. So
Oh my
there is
God.
a difference between, when that point of becoming a client, like choosing to become a client, yes or not. I think that that's a given. Like, not everyone that you have a conversation with, engage with, is going to become a client. Would that be nice and amazing and awesome? Yes. But I'm not talking about that point. I'm talking about the point from intro call to your next meeting. Send out an email. So for Jordan, it looks like this. It looks like, okay, he sends an email immediately after the introduction call for them to schedule their next meeting. If they don't schedule through the calendar link in the email, the follow-up is 3 days later.
Mm.
Then if they don't, the follow-up is a text. So we're
Mhm.
using phone, text, and email as follow-up. So if they don't respond to the email, there's a text 3 days later, then there's a follow-up email 7 days later, and then there's a call 7 days after that. So you're accounting for weeks worth of follow-up in that outline to keep people in the flow of your process. And we have found that usually it's just the email and the text. That's all people need. That text is just a friendly, because your email is probably like, 200 to 300 words. A text is like less than 100 characters. And sometimes that's just easier for people. So we account for multiple methods of communication. And usually, yeah, it doesn't take more than that follow-up text to people to schedule and keep moving along.
That is amazing. I do think that having kind of the timeline is such an underestimated part of it, because how many of us, myself included, have had a lead come in and then you have the conversation, you follow up with them, they don't schedule the next meeting or take the next step. And so you have it in your brain like, okay, I'll follow up with them, but then you get busy doing other client work and you get busy with other things. And all of a sudden, like 2 or 3 weeks have gone by and you're like, oh, I need to follow up with this person. Like, this is a really hot lead, right? And they just got busy and I got busy. It's such an easy way to like lose money, basically.
It is. It totally is. And I do have to toot your horn for a second, because during this process and building this out, you built this amazing map that shows all of the steps, the different branches, and then when each communication is supposed to go out.
Mm.
And just having that visual and going, oh, it's, I had my introduction call on Monday. It's now Thursday. They haven't booked or responded. I've got to send out my text. And just
Mhm.
having that so easily outlined, like I could even, like Jordan has that printed off and near his desk as a reminder, something that's tangible in front of him that is a reminder, because you can have all of these systems and tech and all of this in place, but I think sometimes the advisor just needs a visual
Mm-hmm.
for what to do reminder, just like a little simple tip to keep it in front of them. And that's also to say, even with that little visual, the reminders, the timelines also built out in the workflow in the CRM.
Mm-hmm.
So you're exactly right, though. It's a very predictable process. And this is when you're supposed to follow up. This is when the communications go out. And that just takes the guesswork out of it. Because if you have a really hot lead, and honestly, it's a matter of them just needing a simple reminder by text to schedule, because so they've had the meeting with you and then they've moved on and gone about their life, right? It's not so, hot of an item in their head as it is for you, because as the advisor, you're just in this day in, day out. This is what you do. This is called, well, these people who are looking for financial advisors, they're looking for financial planners, they need help. They have their day-to-day life, their jobs, kids, other things to worry about. So it could just be as simple as that text reminder needed with the link to schedule. They click on it in the moment, book, move on, and then they can go about their life. But if you're allowing 2-3 weeks to go by for the follow-up to happen, there's a couple of things. That person has moved on.
Mm-hmm.
They have either found somebody else. They're just kind of like, oh, this was a really hot priority for me 2 or 3 weeks ago when I was in it, but it's been some time. It's not so hot for me. So you lose it because of that. Like priorities have kind of shifted. Or it also kind of reflects, and this isn't to be mean again, I always hate introducing but it also kind of shows like your follow up. It's
Mm-hmm.
not immediate, it's not right away. And it's, oh, I'll get to that in 2 to 3 weeks from now, or you've forgotten about it. It's just, it shows kind of how the relationship is going to go. And it was a hot priority for them at that point. We have to stick with that. We have to keep that conversation going. And if you allow 2 or 3 weeks to go by without the follow up, well, that kind of is telling or showing of the relationship. And I say that also saying that that is such an easy thing to fix. That is
Yes.
such a big change that you can make. That's not this like, oh my gosh, this huge, big project. No, you're going from responding in 2 to 3 weeks to setting a standard for 24 to 48 hours
Yep.
for communications. And that makes a huge difference.
I could not agree with you more. And I think that I do think that for some people, there might be a little bit of a mindset thing there too that needs to be challenged of like, well, I don't want to bother them. I don't want to badger them. But you are so right. It does the opposite. When you don't reach out 2 to 3 weeks later, it does exactly what you said. It indicates that basically you don't have it together, even though you do. Like you just have a lot going on, but that's unfortunately kind of the subconscious message that's being sent there. And those quick
Yeah.
follow-ups are they inspire so much more confidence, I think.
Yeah, because it does go back to what is the priority for the prospect. And usually, when they're doing their research and they've found you and they've either reached out, or if you have a link for an intro call on your website, which if advisors do not have that set up, they should. That is such an easy way for our advisors to allow an easy start to the relationship, to get a prospect or a lead to actually have a conversation. Because it's one thing for them to call or send an email or send a text to you, but if they're going on your website and scheduling that introduction call and having that purposely scheduled time to discuss their needs and their wants and what they're looking for, that's very intentional. So, but it goes back to the priority for the prospect is they are in the moment thinking about it. This is a priority for them. We don't want them to get out of that sphere or that way of thinking, or go and find somebody else for
Right.
that. Because if
Right.
you're not following up, giving them next steps or the next actions that they have to take, they are going to move on to different priorities that are in front of them. And that's going to be on the back burner until something happens and kind of lights the fire for them to start that conversation again. And who knows how long that'll be, or if they'll even reach out again, or they'll go looking for someone else who does have the follow up, does have the communication. And it's just such an easy thing to fix. And when you talk about the mindset about like, oh, well, it's a lot of communication, I don't want to bug them. Well, they've reached out, they've initiated the conversation. This is a hot topic for them. They want you to bug them. They want you to reach out. I find more times than not, people are so, in this day and age, there is so many distractions and things that people are responsible for or that has their attention. They need that follow-up. They need that. I think advisors are a big part of the relationship is accountability.
Mm-hmm.
So we're not even just talking prospects, we're talking clients. A lot of the times I follow up. So I worked for a really long time as a CSA.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time it's hand holding and it's calling and texting and emailing and whatever it is to remind the client, like, hey, you need to update the beneficiaries on your 401k at work. Or, hey, did you update the investments that the advisor recommended on your 401k? And a lot of the times it never happens immediately when they're asked. It takes a couple times of follow up. So those prospects want you to bug them. They need that. It is essential for them to move through the process with those follow-ups, and why we've developed that into this sales process, this sales conversation. And if they think that you are bothering them and it's an irritation, there's also the side to be true of like, you're not the right fit for them and they're not the right fit for you. And that is okay. So I think that there's this fear that not fear, how do I say this? I think that when a advisor has a conversation with a prospect, there's this hope that they will become a client, or like this need that every person who comes along with that contacts them, that they have a conversation with, is going to become a client. And this is easier said than done because I'm not an advisor. So I don't necessarily have this tunnel vision on that mindset, but it's just not true. You do not, every person that comes through to your firm that you have a conversation with does not need to become a client. You want the right clients. You want the most ideal people to fill the seats on your bus because you only have so many. You can only service so many. And you want the right ones in your seat. So if there's a mindset that like you're bothering them or they get irritated from that, that's probably telling of the type of relationship that you'll have. And if they do come on board as a client, you're going to be a constant bug to them. It's every interaction is going to feel like that from your perspective and from them thinking that. And it's just not ever going to be like, when an email comes in from them or a phone call comes in from them, it's going to be this, okay, like dread, like, okay, got to have a conversation. So you just have to make sure that you're setting up your standards correctly for how you're going to engage. And this sales process does exactly that. And you're going to follow up at the times that you're going to. And if someone is bothered by that, okay, next.
Goodbye.
Who else can I help? Who
Yes.
else is going to find value in what I'm offering, including my follow up? So, yeah. And honestly, my like recommendation around this is send the communication.
Yep.
Do not let that fear keep you from doing what you need to do, because you just never know your outreach, whether it's email marketing, it's a phone call, it's whatever it is, you just never know what kind of conversations those are going to lead to and what kind of client relationships you're going to get from that outreach and
Exactly.
what kind of impact. I always like to take it back to the impact. Is I truly think that advisors are magic makers and miracle workers when it comes to lives. It's not just about like the investment management and the financial planning. I really think that the impact that advisors have on people's lives is really, really something amazing. And if you don't send the communication, if you aren't doing the reach out, you're keeping that impact from coming to full fruition and helping people.
I love that, Ariel. I believe the exact same thing. That's why I work with advisors, because I think the impact that advisors have is just so profound. And I have to say, I have so enjoyed working with you too, because you have that operations mind, and you and I have kind of collaborated a little bit on the CRM side. You know a lot more than I do about the particular CRM that you implemented, or that we implemented this workflow into, so that those reminders would become kind of automatic and be added to a to-do list to send out those follow-up communications and things like that. So I think also just having somebody like you with that systems operations brain is so important for advisors, especially who are doing it themselves. I mean, I think your husband is so lucky. My husband just started a business, and I'm helping him with his marketing. So I'm like, he's so lucky. They're just lucky to have
Yay,
us.
our husbands.
So, Ariel, is there anything that I haven't asked you yet that you think would be useful to round this conversation off?
Yeah, I just want to touch point on what you just said about the systems and tech, because I think that's another area where some advisors can get caught up in what I'm going to call the mental game that
Mm,
all of these things sit up here. Because, like, the process and outlining that and building that out is one thing, but then implementing it is something completely different.
mhm.
And there is so much, like, if you look at Michael Kitt's tech map, there is so much out there for advisors to take advantage. Like, just in one area, you could have 20 different vendors to choose from. And an advisor is probably not going to vet every single one of those. So what I would say is, on the tech side, is there is so much room for efficiency and automation with tech, but it doesn't mean that you have to take this beautiful new process that you've intentionally built out and developed and go throw that into the tech right away. You can build that out as time goes. Like, that can be a
Mhm.
slower process than just having, like, the first thing and foremost is that sales process. Get that developed and get that implemented, because that is going to be, again, I'm going to say it, a game changer.
Yeah.
Every advisor needs to have this. And then you can build it into your tech. I would say the one place I would start with implementing it is your CRM. And
Mhm.
that could look like a checklisted task, or it could look like a step by step workflow. There's a lot, or you could even use it. So, for example, like Wealthbox and Redtail for CRMs, they have what's called pipelines or opportunities, where you can essentially build out a pipeline with your different steps, and you can move your lead along that pipeline with notes. There's so many different things you could do. So just have something where your process is clearly implemented into your CRM, and just make sure that you're following along, moving them along. And then you can start to build things out, like just a few examples with Zapier. So if
Mhm.
you have your intro call on your website, a prospect comes across you, they book an intro call through your calendar, through your website, then Zapier you can integrate where that prospect's information automatically gets input into your CRM as a lead and gets thrown on your sales pipeline. If you're using opportunities in Wealthbox or you're using whatever tool it is in Redtail. So that's just like one. So you're taking the manual input out of it. And I think that takes about 2 or 3 minutes to set up in Zapier. So that's one way. There's also like, if you have your communications built out through this process, throw them in a template, either in Outlook if you use Microsoft, or if you're using your CRM, throw them in there as templates. And then
It's so easy.
There's just little, like, those are just 2 little nuggets that you can do. There's so much more, but just don't get overwhelmed with fully implementing it with tech. Start small. And then as time goes on, you can build out this fully robust system. And one other thing I would say is kind of your test pilot. So when you first implement this, or for any change that you make, I would always do a test subject, and you suggested this, of 3 prospects or 3 leads. Change it, implement it, test it for 3, and then pivot and go, okay, what did I like about this? What did I not like about this? Make any fixes that you need to. And then again, have 3 people that you test it with. Because again, that's going to keep you from constantly being up here in the mental game of reevaluating your systems and processes and trying to answer that question of, how can I do this differently? How can I do this better? That's not the question you should be. I mean, that's always the question you can ask yourself. But the right question is, does this allow me to help people? And if so, you're good.
All systems go.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
I love that, Aryel. I think that we're definitely going to have the word game changer in the title of this episode, because I was going to say it a couple times too. Yeah, no, I think that's great. Well, if people want to get in touch with you, Aryel, where's the best place that they can do that?
Yeah. So if you want to get in touch with me, you can find me on LinkedIn is the best place. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I'll link to your profile in the show notes. And I just want to say thank you so, so much for coming on and having this really open conversation with me about a project that we worked on together. I loved working on the project with you and with Jordan, mostly with you. And I just really appreciate you coming and kind of sharing a little bit of behind the scenes with my listeners as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was such a fun conversation, especially around something that I am really passionate about. This was just such a fun project to work through with you. And honestly, I think that if we had done it with anybody else, we would not be seeing the results in Jordan's firm that we are. I think that you have a heart for what you do, but it was really cool working on a project together and really seeing that poured into the work that you provide to advisors was just really refreshing and invigorating, and honestly made me want to be engaged in this project and get this completed, because it was just really cool to have someone who is just equally as passionate about, financial advisors and helping them just do a better job at communicating, because that's really what this is about, is that communication piece. So thank you for having me. Thank you for the work that we did together. This was amazing.
This was amazing. All right. Thanks so much, Aryel. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Finance Marketing Podcast. If you're eager to market your business in a way that feels good and actually gets results, sign up for the Finance Marketing Podcast newsletter in the show notes so you never miss another episode. If you liked what you heard today, please be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite listening app and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. We'll see you back here next Friday.